Today we have the great honor to deal with a sacred institution, which is our Ecumenical Patriarchate, an institution of a long, long life, in essence of 2,000 years, but in technical terms for 17 centuries. There is a history behind the creation of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. At the time of the Holy Apostles, there was no Constantinople. Constantinople was built by St. Constantine in the 4th century. So when one of the apostles, the first called Apostle Andrew, went to his missionary trip through Asia Minor and up in Pontus, and then he decided to come down, pass from Thrace and end up in Patras. On his kind of way, he stopped at a place called Byzantion. It's exactly on the location of contemporary Constantinople. This small town called Byzantion was a colony of people from Megara, Greece, very old, 7th century before Christ. So Apostle Andreas comes there, stops, and proclaims the gospel. And there are people who believe. A first community is created, and the apostle was even able to establish there a bishop, the first bishop, by the name of Stachys, around the year 37-38, which means 4 years after the ascension of Christ, very close. Stachys is succeeded by Onesimus, and there is a succession of bishops on this small town called Byzantion. There were 20 bishops until the year 330. Why until 330? Because at that time it was the official inauguration of Constantinople as the new capital of the Roman Empire. And with the new capital of the Roman Empire, there is no small town Byzantion, it was absorbed there, and the bishop of Byzantion automatically becomes, the last one was Mitrophanes, and his successor, Bishop Alexander, succeeding him in 313, but he was bishop until 337, is the first real bishop of Constantinople as the capital of the Roman Empire. And this is the official, technically speaking, the official beginning of the Patriarchate as Patriarchate of Constantinople. Although it has a prehistory with 25 bishops in the same location, but the name of Byzantion. Now, what follows then is a series of patriarchs and bishops, and we have to see first what happens in the period from 330 to the fall of Constantinople, 1453. Now, we have a number of patriarchs succeeding the first, the Alexander, 270. Our present Patriarch Bartholomew is the 270th Patriarch of Constantinople. It should be noted that among the 270, there are 61 patriarchs who have been declared saints or martyrs. It's a big number of patriarchs becoming saints or martyrs. But we have also a development which was really astonishing in a way, in terms of speed. Before the 330, we had the first ecumenical council in the city of Nicaea, across from Constantinople. There was no mention of Constantinople there because there was no Constantinople officially. However, after 330, with official declaration of Constantinople as a capital, we have a rapid development of Constantinople as a prominent city and of the Bishop, Archbishop, Patriarch of Constantinople as a very prominent now person. How prominent? We have the Second Ecumenical Council in the year 381, approximately only 50 years from the foundation of Constantinople. The development is so fast that we have the Patriarch of Constantinople, by the name of St. Gregory the Theologian, becoming the presiding hierarch of the Second Ecumenical Council. And his successor, by the name of Nectarios, continued again to be the presiding bishop or archbishop or patriarch of the Second Ecumenical Council. What happens at the Second Ecumenical Council is that there is a canon number 3 of this council, by which the Archbishop and Patriarch of Constantinople is now to be counted second to the Patriarch or Pope of Rome, before the Patriarchs of Alexandria, Jerusalem, and Antioch. That shows the prominence now of Constantinople. What happens in the next century is one more step, which is, in the year 451, we have the Fourth Ecumenical Council in Chalcedon, across from Constantinople. In this council, in canon of this council number 28, it's stated that from now on, the Archbishop and Patriarch of Constantinople has to have the equal rank with the Bishop of Rome. It's not number 2 anymore. It's on the same now level with the number 1 Rome. It's a tremendous step. 1 century later, by the end of the 6th century, we have a new item, the title ecumenical, to the Patriarchate and to the Patriarch. And this is a title because it's justified by the facts. At that time, this is, by the way, the time and the century of the building of Hagia Sophia, of Justinian, and the real expansion of the Byzantine Empire. What we have at that time, the Byzantine Empire, of which the Patriarch is the number 1 hierarch, covers the whole of Asia Minor, going down south, what today is Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, and part of Jordan, turning North Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Morocco, Algiers today, reaching the end of Gibraltar. On the European side, the whole of the Balkans, plus Central Europe, even sometimes you go even to contemporary France and part of Spain. It was an ecumenical kind of empire. That's why the Patriarch was really someone who would have the responsibility, ecclesiastical responsibility of this huge geographical area. It was not a huge in the sense of a long desert like Sahara. It was huge in terms of plenty of different nations, cultures, languages, things like that. It was really ecumenical. So this happened, and here we have the Patriarchate working and doing what they have to do now. What they have to do? Let's first focus on the major period from 330 to the fall of Constantinople. That's a clear Byzantine Empire period. What do we have there? We have a tremendous offering of this Patriarchate, a multi-level, multi-dimensional kind of offering. Let me mention in passing of course, some of them. It will take hours and days to describe in detail all of them. First, the theological literary offering. Almost the entire patristic literature, almost the entire, with a few exceptions, written in Greek language, is under the Ecumenical Patriarchate. In fact, some of the great fathers, like St. John Chrysostom, St. Gregory, they were even patriarchs of Constantinople, and they are top patristic authors. So the wealth of the patristic literature in Greek language is inseparably related to the Patriarchate. Even if you talk about Cyril of Alexandria, Alexandria was under the Constantinople, under the Roman Empire. Or if you talk about plenty of authors from Asia Minor, Gregory of Nyssa, Basil the Great, Eusebius of Caesarea, and later on Maximus, a confessor, John Damascenus, all of them are in the area defined as geographically and ecclesiastically as Ecumenical Patriarchate, basically. So this is number one. Number two, during these years, the Patriarchate develops a missionary activity, proclaiming the gospel. However, we have to be again very careful with the data of history, the real data. The Patriarchate did not try to change the language, the culture, or the religion of the people that were under the empire. They did the evangelization in a very delicate, very sensitive, very careful way, not to hurt anything that has to do with local traditions, ethnicities, or cultural origins. But they did a tremendous kind of activity, especially some of the patriarchs. Perhaps the most known among them, in addition to the early fathers like Chrysostom and Gregory, was Patriarch Photius the Great in the 9th century, who did quite a job with the missionary work, and he was the patriarch who sent St. Cyril and Methodius from Thessaloniki to Central Europe, not to evangelize the Slavs there who were already Christians, but to give them a tremendous advance culturally by creating the alphabet, therefore giving them the possibility of a written language. Up to that time, the Slavs did not have a written language. It was just oral. Therefore, there was no literature. From that time on, because of Cyril and Methodius and because of Patriarch Photius, they have a written language. They started developing literature. This is why today in Russia, the feast of St. Cyril and Methodius, this feast is a big national feast. I have happened to be there at one occasion. It was a 4-day feast. It was a national big holiday. That's Byzantium. That's Patriarchate. Then you have a tremendous activity and pioneering activity in the field of philanthropy and care for human beings in any conditions of distress. Byzantium has been, all the years of its existence, attacked on all fronts, from south, from east, from north, from west. There was no time when there was no some ethnicity, some race, something attacking. That meant wars, and that meant plenty of deaths. That meant plenty of widows. The husbands went to war, they were killed, the widow, the wife is behind with children, orphans. The church make a big issue to take care of this kind of thing because that was a permanent, steady condition. I mean, unavoidable. And they developed very early on. St. Basil, we know of the Vasilias, there have been written quite a number of books about the philanthropy of Byzantium. It's a big, big, big chapter in the history of civilization, not only of philanthropy, it's civilization in general. So here you have this kind of thing. You have then another achievement, the achievement of keeping the possibility within the Byzantium of life of various ethnicities. They were united by the Orthodox element, by the Patriarchate. The Patriarchate was the common denominator that keep them living and developing freely, keeping their identity, but at the same time belonging to an Orthodox empire. That was a big achievement. Sometimes we overlook it, but that's a big thing. And then you go to an immense offering of Byzantium in the field of arts in general. Iconography, be it the small icons, portable, the iconography on the walls, al fresco or any other type, the mosaics. It's an immense field for the art. And this is something that lasted 10 full centuries. Actually, it continued. But we talk about the Patriarchate or that period. Icons, Byzantine music, hymnology, hymnography, huge offering. There are thousands and thousands of pages containing the hymns and therefore containing the music. It's a musical production, ongoing. Architecture. You have Hagia Sophia, but in addition to Hagia Sophia, you have after that the masterpieces, which are the so-called Byzantine churches. You find them everywhere, especially Middle Asia Minor, Greece, the area of Constantinople. And they are really achievements, artistic achievements in the field of architecture. Hagia Sophia, in addition of being something amazing, if you are there, you feel the immensity of space and the result of uplifting that you feel there. But in addition to that, Hagia Sophia is a masterpiece of science. It was built not at the time when the people have computers. How they could do with this dome up there, and how come that in spite of many earthquakes, which caused the destruction and the collapse of big buildings being with iron and concrete, how come that this dome and this church did not fall down? What construction? It was just something of a genius in terms of architecture, unsurpassed really. And if then you continue, look at the plenty of items like the chalices, the Holy Gospels, crosses, items used in worship. It's a huge field of smith work with gold, silver, even copper sometimes or iron, precious stones. So then here is another big field in which you have the offering of our Ecumenical Patriarchate. So then, and this happened as I said, under conditions that externally were very bad for the Patriarchate, because there were wars. So we go that way, but before the fall, we should mention the sacking of Constantinople in the year 1204 by one of the Crusades, and that was a deadly blow because it weakened considerably Constantinople, and it took almost 60 years to recover and recuperate from this blow, but it was already a wounded, so to say, empire. So we have the fall of Constantinople in 1453. Now, what follows is a time of a situation described by Runciman as the great church in captivity. The Patriarchate is in captivity because it now has to live under occupation and under an Islamic state. No matter what the tolerance of that state, it was a hard time. That's why we have in the period of this under the Ottoman Empire, we have quite a number of neo-martyrs, people who were martyrs because they refused to become Muslims. Because it was an attempt in many areas of the Ottoman Empire, an attempt to convert Christians, Orthodox, into Islam. So the Patriarchate has a very difficult role to protect this kind of situation and the population, which was a very difficult thing because it lasted for centuries. And please remember that the Patriarchate has the responsibility of areas which today are Serbia, Bulgaria, Romania, Albania. Why? Because only Russia was an autocephalous, became an autocephalous church in the 16th century. All other churches became autocephalous in the 19th and 20th century. So during this time, the Patriarchate had to take care of all of these areas and all of the people in these areas. It's a huge effort. Plus, the Patriarchate has to also, and the Church in general, the Orthodox Church, to exercise the right of being the judicial units, the courts, especially for minor cases. So here we have this kind of situation, a tremendous ministry to the Orthodox people under really very bad conditions. And so we reach our time. We reach our time with a dramatic thing that happened in the Patriarchate. The dramatic thing happened in the beginning of the 20th century. It was the destruction of large populations, Orthodox populations, in Pontus, in Asia Minor. We talk about hundreds of thousands of people that were killed, and we talk about people that remained, they have to exit. It was a massive exodus. As a result, areas which had hundreds of thousands of Orthodox people for centuries, even before Christ, as Greek populations, became all of a sudden diminished so much that at the beginning of this century and after the catastrophes, they were left approximately 100,000, but then because of the continuous exit, we ended today with an Orthodox Christian population in Turkey of more or less 3,000 people only. That's the immediate direct population of the Patriarchate. It has metropolis outside, that's another story. But within the Turkey, this is the number. So now we have to keep in mind this condition and see what this Patriarchate does under these circumstances. This Patriarchate developed, especially under the Patriarchs Athenagoras, Demetrios, and of course now the major part under the present Patriarch, developed a ministry of love and reconciliation on 4 levels. Level 1, love, cultivating love and connection among the Orthodox people, the inter-Orthodox effort of the Patriarchate. His effort, the effort of the Ecumenical Patriarch to bring together the autocephalous churches today. Russia, Bulgaria, Serbia, Romania, Poland, Czech Republics, Albania, Cyprus, Alexandria, Antioch, Jerusalem, and Georgia. Bring them together. That was not an easy thing. At the beginning of his tenure, early 1990s, the Patriarch started this kind of major convocations of the heads of the autocephalous churches. He did it in order to resolve current issues. It was a problem with Australia, it was a problem with the Patriarch of Jerusalem, it was a problem with Bulgaria, it was a problem with Cyprus. There were a number of problems in which the Patriarch, the present Patriarch, took the bold initiative of gathering the heads of the autocephalous churches. Not an easy thing. I was in one of them in 2008 in Constantinople, and I can tell you how wise and loving the Patriarch was in directing the work for proper decisions by this meeting of the heads of the autocephalous churches. And one of the major things now that Patriarch has been working, succeeding in that, Patriarch Athenagoras and Demetrios, is the work towards organizing a pan-Orthodox synod. We have no synod, pan-Orthodox synod, for almost 12 centuries. And in the meantime, there have been considerable developments in human history, necessitating a confrontation with new problems, new conditions, new challenges. So the Patriarch, again, we have to do that. The Patriarchate, it's a continuous number of meetings. Among other things is the question of diaspora, which means the spreading of Orthodox people outside of the original churches from which they come. Just like here, United States, Australia, Europe, outside of the main Orthodox countries. It's a big issue, the so-called diaspora, the spreading of Orthodox people outside of their own original churches. So this is one of the very basic things that Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew worked very, very methodically, intensely, wisely, and unyieldingly for the purpose of obtaining this kind of synod, pan-Orthodox synod. Number two, a reconciliation ministry by the Patriarchate and the Patriarchs among Christians, cultivating the dialogue among the Christian churches, Protestant and Roman Catholic. That's, of course, something that the Patriarchate did very early on. We have already in the 16th, 17th century, it was in the end of 16th century, it was an exchange between the Patriarchate under Patriarch Jeremiah II and the German theologians of a famous school of Tübingen, Lutheran theologians. It was an exchange of letters aiming at finally some sort of union, because the Lutherans felt that they would like to do something to connect with one. Since they have been separated from the Roman Catholic Church, they felt the need probably to do something connecting with the Orthodox Church. This didn't succeed, but it was an early attempt. But the Ecumenical Patriarchate was heavily involved in the 20th century with a conference in Lambeth of the Anglican Church, being one of the founding churches of the World Council of Churches in 1948, then developing a constant, uninterrupted dialogue with the Roman Catholic Church and the Anglican Church and the Protestant churches, something that is going on today. And not only on an international level, but locally. We have dialogues like that here in this country, very successful. But they are part of the effort of the Ecumenical Patriarch at reconciliation among all Christians. So then we have this kind of thing, and this is not only the dialogue. We have quite a number of other efforts. We have, for instance, the celebration of the Thronic, as it's called, feasts, both for Rome and Constantinople. Rome for the feast of St. Peter and St. Paul, and Constantinople for St. Andrew. There are always representations for these feasts. Sometimes the heads of the two churches, Pope and Patriarch, have been participants in this kind. That's one of the efforts at reconciliation among the Christians. One of the expressions of this thing is that the Roman Catholic Church then was convinced that they could do some things like returning, for instance, the relics of St. John Chrysostom, St. Gregory the Theologian to the Patriarchate after 800 years of keeping them in Rome. This happened in the year 2004. A very important thing. And that was one of the things. Before that, we had the return of a relic of St. Andrew to Patras, the place of the martyrdom of St. Andrew. Now, there are other things that are indicative of this effort of the Patriarch. Is a continuous daily effort. And then we have a reconciliation among the religions. The Patriarch, again, very instrumental in doing this kind of thing at all, sometimes levels and costs. We have a very important conference in Constantinople, the so-called Bosporus Conference, which ended with a very important declaration. Among them, it's a short sentence, which then became a permanent slogan, which says, any crime in the name of the religion is a crime against religion. It's a famous slogan that stays as a principle in dealing with this kind of issues. And the Patriarch didn't hesitate to travel to places that were not easy. Iran, Qatar, Libya. He had a personal encounter with Gaddafi, if you remember Gaddafi. I mean, he did this type of daring kind of efforts in order to help reconciliation among religions, not to talk about what he's doing within Turkey itself in terms of the Islam there versus Orthodox Christianity. And then the reconciliation of human beings with the environment. So you can see the series here. Love for the development of inter-Orthodox, reconciliation for inter-Christian, reconciliation for inter-religions, reconciliations for the environment. And here is a constant effort. Among them, one of the most important was the so-called the series of symposia that were performed on a trip to a boat always. We started with the Aegean in 1995, Black Sea 97, Adriatica 2002, River Danube 99, Baltic Sea 2003, Amazon River 2006, Arctic area 2007, Mississippi River 2009. I have been in a number of them, and I have to tell you, that's a very, very significant kind of activity. You are on a big boat for 1 week. Let me speak about the specific Baltic event. We started with Gdansk. Sunday evening, we are there. Monday morning, the boat leaves. Baltic Sea was a heavily polluted sea. First stop, Tallinn, Estonia. Go out because they develop a terrific program for ecological protection. Back the boat, Helsinki, Finland. They have a terrific program for cleaning every dirty water from any sewer of Helsinki and producing clean water for the Baltic Sea. It's a big thing, unique as a construction. And ending on next Sunday in Stockholm, Sweden, because they have also a very developed environmental program. So 1 week we are on a boat from morning till evening in a conference kind of situation, almost 200 people, top scientists for the environment and top theologians. There were 3 cardinals. There was a Bishop of London, Archbishop of Stockholm, Bishop of Helsinki, to mention a few. And also from the Muslim and the Jewish world. And top scientists. There were 2 Nobel laureates, 2 economists, top economists. It's a serious business, this kind of ecological program, initiated and performed and produced exclusively and fully by the Patriarch Bartholomew. So then, you can imagine now that we could not even finish talking about that, thinking also that this has been done with limited human resources. You don't have the thousands of people that are in Vatican or in Canterbury or even in other places. There are very few people that work. It's a gigantic work done by very few people because of the Patriarch, basically. He's the moving power. Now, he faces, and the Patriarch faces, some difficulties beyond the difficulty of the atmosphere, the conditions there. The refusal of the Turkish government to recognize the title of ecumenical, although it's a title from the 6th century on, for 14 centuries, the refusal to give the Patriarchate and the minorities, it's not only for the Patriarchate, the minorities, the non-Muslim minorities, a legal status, which has an impact on finances and other things. The confiscation of property, although recently the Turkish government gave back a number of confiscated properties. It was a good step, but there were plenty of them still under condition of confiscation. And for the still remaining closing of Halki. Under these circumstances, the Patriarch and the Patriarchate does what I described before, love and reconciliation on so many levels. It's a miracle. No, it's not a miracle, it's a series of miracles here. We have the honor of being part of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. The Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America is an eparchy of the ecumenical throne. In fact, it's the biggest eparchy of the ecumenical throne in terms of population and number of clergy. We are here and we are an integral part of the Patriarchate under the spiritual and administrative jurisdiction of the Ecumenical Patriarchate, and we do anything possible to assist the Patriarch personally and the Patriarchate in general in their very sacred work on all levels: environmental, inter-religious, inter-Christian, and inter-Orthodox. And we have here in our country a very strong body of dedicated people, the archons of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Is the order of St. Andrew of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Approximately 800 people, among them some totally dedicated to the work of Patriarchate by even neglecting their own job and their own work that they have to do and doing everything for the Patriarchate, helping in legal issues, financial issues, being constantly in touch with the high authorities in this country, from the White House down, State Department, Senate, House of Representatives, and other services, trying by all means to alleviate the difficulties that the Patriarchate faces, especially because of some problems with the Turkish government. So it's a big continuous work that the Archons and the Archdiocese does for the Patriarchate as a very small return for the tremendous gift for us of being a part of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. This kind of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. If you have such a past, you are not afraid of the future. If we have 2,000 years, and this Patriarchate is there in spite of 6 centuries now of captivity, that in spite of what some people say, doesn't create any problems for the future. A long history is a guarantee for a long future, a non-ending future. That's the case. And it's a case because it's a mixture of pain, ordeals, martyrdom, and glory. There was nothing more glorious than the Patriarchate in the peak of the Byzantine glory, and there is nothing more painful than the Patriarchate under captivity for so many centuries. That's a guarantee for the present and the future. I would like to close with something that comes from our sacred texts, our Bible. The Patriarch personally frequently mentions that we are a Patriarchate which is crucified. But there is no crucifixion. There is no conceptual way of having a crucifixion without the resurrection. It's impossible. So he said, we are crucified, but we know that we are also not only anticipating some resurrection in a general sense, but just being constantly resurrected. We die and we resurrect. It's a language of St. Paul. Every day I'm dying, every day I'm alive. And St. Paul said something very beautiful, writing to the Corinthians. He said, I have been given tremendous gifts from God. I have been even taken up to third heaven and heard things that are unheard of. So I have been given a direct revelation by God, but I'm still being tormented by a thorn in the flesh. I asked the Lord to take it from me. He said, no, you have to have this kind of thorn, you have to have this kind of pain, because my power, says God, is perfected in your weakness, not in your power. Η δύναμις μου εν ασθενεία τελειούται. My power is perfected in your weakness. And so, St. Paul will say, we can do everything in conditions of weakness, in conditions of persecution, needs, persecutions, distresses for Christ, because when, says Paul, I am weak, then I am strong. And then he ends with something from Philippians, when he says, I know how to be humiliated, and I know how to abound. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger, abundance and want. And the end, I can do all things in him who strengthens me, in Christ. The Patriarchate and the Patriarch can do all things because of Christ, who is strengthening him as he did with his 269 predecessors. Let's continue to keep the Patriarchate in our prayers, the Patriarch personally, and the people in Constantinople in our prayers, and let us do anything possible to assist the Ecumenical Patriarchate in her very sacred mission in a very wounded and suffering contemporary world. Thank you for listening.